Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Kernel Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Lucas, joined by my co-host, Giana Gallo. Would you like to say hi?
Of course. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Picture Kentucky, a photojournalism workshop hosted by the University of Kentucky. We're joined by guest Abbey Cutrer.
Yes, our managing editor at the Kentucky Kernel.
Yes, and just a disclaimer, the speaker's opinions expressed on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the Kentucky Kernels. All right, let's go. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Abbey Cutrer. I'm the managing and photo editor of the Kentucky Kernel.
All right, and so for our listeners, today we're going to be talking about Picture Kentucky, which Abbey and I attended over this past weekend. So, Giana, you didn't go to Picture Kentucky. What questions do you have about it?
I have so many. A very long list of questions about Picture Kentucky. As a younger student, a sophomore, you are a
Junior.
Nate is a senior. So what exactly is Picture Kentucky?
So it is a photojournalism workshop, which is aimed to help all younger photojournalists kind of get in the right path. So there's about 20 of us attending. We all go to this farm in Frankfort. It's a Kentucky State research farm, part of a land grant program. And we all get there around 11 in the morning on Wednesday, and we get assigned coaches. There are 4 different coaches this year. Gary Cosby, Matt Dietrich, Pete Souza, and Nicole Hester, who are all incredibly talented photojournalists. And the whole thing is run by our Professor David Stevenson. And so we all go outside and pull a name out of a hat of some random in Frankfort, just a completely random person who knows that they'll be photographed. But over the next 3 days, the participants have to make a conclusive photo essay about that subject without any prior knowledge of the person or sometimes the town. Some people have never been to Frankfort. But that's kind of the rundown.
Interesting. Nate, what do you feel like, going off of Abbey, is Picture Kentucky? Any details that she might have missed?
Yeah, I think it's super cool and because it's unique to UK. And I just kept explaining it as a workshop to people. I just kept saying I'm doing a photography workshop because it is kind of hard to explain because people don't understand like what journalism is to begin with. And then on top of that, you're doing like a camp for journalism. So it was hard for me to explain to outside people, but I think Abbey did a really good job at aptly describing it. I would agree.
What do you feel like, because you mentioned, right, journalism, and then Picture Kentucky, you're working on a collection of photos to tell a story. What is the difference between journalism and photojournalism? And exactly at Picture Kentucky, you're not writing a story, so how are you going to try and convey a story only through pictures?
Well, we actually do write a story at the end of it, which is pretty new for some photographers. So that's actually the best part, I think, about Picture Kentucky is it combines photography and journalism, which is really great. So the photographers who sometimes people are used to like studio photography or fashion photography, they'll come to the workshop and really get to learn how to tell people's stories, which is really what journalism is all about, is telling people's stories and giving a voice to the voiceless. So these people in Frankfort and Franklin County really don't have their stories told. There's not like a local paper telling their stories frequently. The Kentucky Lantern is there, but they're focused on some bigger political things. But the small, intimate stories in Frankfort are mainly what's focused, and I think that Picture Kentucky does a great job of combining a written story with photos and telling a story with visuals and then a little written piece as well.
So as a writer, the majority of the time, and as somebody who didn't really pick up a camera all that often before this week, I knew what aperture and shutter speed and ISO were, but I didn't really know how to use them in coordination with each other. I think that taking pictures for me was really just about getting more intimate with somebody because, like, when I'm writing, I can always, like, just immediately ask the person for an interview, but with pictures, People tend to shy away from that a little bit more. And even though I got a story, I worked on the river, just like the Kentucky River in general. So I wasn't like super intimate with my subject, but I had to establish like that line of intimacy immediately with the subjects that I did photograph that were humans. So like the very first day, I came across these two couples who were camping at a creek at an RV camp, and usually I would have just gone up to them and said like what I was there for, because all I need is a quote from them. I don't really need anything else. But this time I knew that if I immediately asked to take photos of them, it would be like kind of awkward, and I knew that I needed to form a bond with them first. So I found a guy. The guy was taking pictures. So I was like, "Oh, are you taking pictures out here?" And I had my camera wrapped around my neck. And then we got to having a conversation. And then, that leads him to the question of, what are you taking photos out here? And I tell him, well, I was actually hoping to take photos of you. And so, we talked for like 5 minutes already. So he was super down to let me take photos of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it worked out really well. But that's just not something that I would have done if I was writing a story. So
Right.
I think that's the difference, really.
Yeah, you have to be much more intentional with a subject, because with interviews you can just, you are writing a story and you just really need a quote. But this, you have to form a relationship with a stranger kind of before you can take photos of them, especially when it comes to a story, because the quotes don't just fall in line. You actually need to document every single aspect of their day rather than just like where they are if they were to do an interview.
Abby, what was your story that you drew out of the hat?
I drew the name Cassidy Cornett out of a hat, and she worked at the Salado Wildlife Education Center in Frankfort, and she works really closely with the raptors, which are really big birds, like falcons and hawks and owls, and then she also does an educational side of it as well. So she'll walk around with the birds and teach people about them, and she gave kind of a whole rundown of how the raptors are crucial and integral to our ecosystem and how we learn and process.
That's so neat. I know you were kind of talking about this creek story. Give me more details on that, please.
Yeah, so I did a whole bunch of stuff. What I drew out of the hat, I think it really just said, research the Kentucky River and its relationship with the land around it and the people of Frankfort and whatever. So that led me to a bunch of different things. I met a guy who was a scientist at a mussel conservation center. I met a woman who was just like very intertwined with the river spiritually, who happened to just work at a historical place around town. And she would, like, during the summer, she would go and swim in the river. And I went on 2 boat rides.
Ooh.
And one of those boat rides was a historical tour boat called the Bourbon Belle. So they do, like, bourbon tours on the Kentucky River in Frankfort. And so, yeah, I really just ran around downtown Lexington near the river. And then I also went to the campsite, as I said, did that as well.
Obviously, you said there was also 4 like mentors throughout this Picture Kentucky process. But when you were assigned your story, were they kind of guiding you on where you should kind of lead your story? Who should you interview, or was this like it's all on you? Figure it out. Where do you want to take this story?
I feel like most of the coaches are pretty intentional about telling you kind of how to follow along the story. And the first, so this is my 3rd year attending Picture Kentucky, and the first 2 years I also had really great coaches. And this year, the way the coaches kind of work is you get the subject and you have a little moment to talk with them and ask them where they think you should go with the story. It's hard to know right off the bat. A lot of us figure out what the story is later on in the week once we've taken a few photos. So I know somebody had a woodworker as their story, and that was like the main subject. But then eventually the story became about him and his daughter because she would often visit. Yeah, so the story kind of evolves, and I think that's something really important about Picture Kentucky is with just writing, you don't really see the story evolve, but with photos, you stick around long enough, like 3 days straight with this person in their life, in their home sometimes, and it takes a little bit longer to figure out what the story really is.
Yeah.
So I found that all the coaches kind of had different coaching styles and what they expected, just because it's a workshop. So they have the ability to do that. So my coach specifically, he was very hands-off. We discussed the story a couple of times, and he gave me some ideas, but it was pretty much in my hands just to make it whatever I wanted.
Did you like that, or no? You wanted a little more guidance?
Oh yeah, I liked that. I think
Okay.
I think it helped me, honestly. I knew that I had to push myself this week, and after the first day, I was really worried about getting not that much sleep. But after the first day, it didn't affect me as much anymore. I think that's just like a personal thing. Like if I don't get a night of sleep, like I'm dreading that. But then afterwards, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Like it's not that big of a deal. So I think that that pushed me to better myself and just take a lot of photos, messing with the controls and everything. And like I eventually got up to take a sunrise photo, which I don't know if I would have done if I was like pushed by authority to do that. Like I would have wanted to rebel against the authority. But like I was saying, there's like the different coaching styles, and my coach stressed he had like the watermelon technique. So he said something about like getting past the seeds to get to the good stuff, or getting the watermelon close to the rind. So really what that meant is you just take out of the box pictures. So one of the pictures that ended up being in my final photo story was literally just like a picture of a boat's wake, like the water of a boat's wake, just because it was like a really detailed shot. But usually that wouldn't be in like a newspaper story.
Yeah. How long was Picture Kentucky, and what did like the day-to-day look like?
So we typically, it lasts from Wednesday morning to Saturday night / Sunday morning.
Wow.
Like 1 a.m. So a typical day would be so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we all wake up, shoot the sunrise. So that's around 7. So you get up around 6, go shoot the sunrise, some random spot in Frankfurt. Sometimes it has to do with your subject. Sometimes it doesn't. For me, it was just I went to the Daniel Boone Cemetery and took pictures there. It has a really good look out of the Capitol. But then you go follow around your subject during the day, maybe have a lunch break, maybe not. And then later in the evening, around 7:30, you go drop off your SD cards, and that's when the coaches start going through them. And then around 8, there's some really neat presentations. So the coaches all have kind of a combination of their work to present at these nightly shows. So there were some really great presentations. And then after the coaches' presentations, they do our nightly critique. So we all have a few photos from the day that our coaches selected that they go through, and the coaches are up there critiquing them, saying this was great, this was not so great. And then after that, there's a shootout contest. So there's like a theme for each day. The first one is sense of place, and the second one is faces, and the third one is moments. And then the last day, the idea is to combine all three.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I don't really have anything to add.
Did you like waking up that early to go shoot the sunset?
Yeah, so I woke up early 2 days in a row. I woke up pretty early, not to shoot the sunrise, but just to shoot the nice sun. Because like once you get to the middle of the day, the sun is a lot worse. So as a photographer, you can't take photos like that. So that was something that also changed for me from writing, is like I was limited to a time of day. More appreciation for photographers for sure. And on Friday, I woke up like very early to shoot the sunrise. So I woke up very early on Friday to shoot the sunrise, And then on Saturday, I slept in because I just had the river as my subject, and I was already done with all my work. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Was this really, I know obviously you all had individual stories, but when was there a time to kind of group together besides these presentations at night? What did you guys like have dinner? Did you, obviously lunch was kind of skeptical sometimes, but
Yeah, there was, I will say something about this year. There was a ton of camaraderie. We all kind of know each other. Everyone that was there seemed to be really friendly with each other. I really got to know some people that I didn't know previously. And we all kind of get together at the farm, which is, it's not, so it is an actual farm. It's a functioning farm, but there's a really nice building at the center of it with a bunch of technology for us to do our presentations and editing and good Wi-Fi. But that's kind of where we all collect. And then we also all stayed in the same hotel, which most of the time we just were sleeping. But
yeah, I didn't see anybody that was my roommate in the hotel. Not even when I was eating breakfast, I don't think. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, we were all doing our own thing.
yeah.
what was your favorite presentation given?
They're all so great, but my favorite was probably Nicole's. Nicole Hester is a photojournalist at the Tennessean in Nashville. So I actually met her in my internship last summer. She's very talented, but her presentation was just super, super moving. She talked about women in journalism and the passion that they have, and then how to cover really heavy events. She's done a lot of stuff. So when there was a shooting in Nashville at the Covenant School, she was there covering it like probably 20 minutes after it happened. So she has a very famous photo of a kid crying in a school bus right after it happened. And she opened her presentation with a picture of her in a school bus that's almost identical to the picture that she took however many 20 years later.
Wow.
So it was super moving. She's just very passionate about what she does, and I've learned so much from her already. And so her talking about that, I think all of us were really emotional and kind of really got that spark for journalism and photojournalism. Yeah.
Who was your favorite presentation of the students?
Oh, of the students. I'd have to think. There was so many good ones.
Okay.
Like, truly, there was so many good ones.
Do you want me to answer? And
Yeah,
then we
you
can
go
come
ahead.
back?
You go ahead.
Okay, so for the teaching, obviously Pete Souza, he used to be the chief staff photographer for the Obama administration.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, and he had a lot of access photos of Obama that were super cool.
Yeah.
And just a lot of like modern historical moments, like the Bin Laden assassination, the Sandy Hook shooting,
Oh, my goodness.
a bunch of international photos of Obama just diplomating.
That's really neat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very, very cool
He's
to
so
see.
talented.
Yes,
It
he's
seems
very,
like
very
all of these
talented.
mentors like had a huge role in journalism.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say I think Pete Souza. I think the photos that we saw. I don't know if there will ever be any other photos from an administration that will reach that level of access, like, or greatness. Honestly, like, not trying to hype him up or anything, but like he had a relationship with Obama before Obama got in office, so they were already like very chill together when Obama first became a senator. Pete worked during the Reagan administration just as a normal
wow.
photographer, just a staff photographer. And so, and then just Obama's personality as well, just his openness to the American people. I don't know if there will ever be a president like that again that has the photographer, that has the dedication to do that, the access, and a president that's going to give their photographer that access and that has that relationship with their chief photographer. So it was just like a match made in heaven, and we got to see the product of that with his presentation.
That must have been really incredible to see and hear about. Yeah. What about student presentation?
So my favorite student presentation, I really liked Brady Saylor's. their presentation was awesome because they covered a football coach, and they just had some amazing photos when there wasn't much like to take photos of. And also their presentation was really funny. I forgot what they said, but there was something really funny in there.
They said that people kept calling them like, "Oh, excuse me,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Sorry."
Yeah, and they're 19, so it's like so it's
like I'm 1
straight out
year
of high
removed
school.
from high
Yeah,
school.
that was so funny. Yeah, but I really liked that presentation.
Yeah, that one was incredible. I loved that one as well. High school football stories. This is just a known like nerdy photojournalism fact, is that high school football makes the best pictures because they're much more excited than college. But my favorite, one of my favorite student presentations was Rena's. She'd never taken photos before except for like one of David's classes. But she just got really intimate with her subject. She got a farmer named Keenan, and she got to go to, like, she's just such a great people person, which really helps in photojournalism. And so she just got so close right off the bat that he was willing to, like, invite her to his daughter's birthday party. And, very intimate. And it was like, yeah, she just showed up at his daughter's birthday party and got to be there and document that moment. And she also just took some really incredible photos.
Yeah. So you have been to Picture Kentucky 3 years. How many?
This was my first year.
What were your thoughts first year? Do you regret it? Do you wish you went more?
So I wish I went last year, but I just had a scheduling conflict. I just couldn't make it. But I really enjoyed it. I think that anybody in journalism at the University of Kentucky should definitely try this. You're going to receive the support that you need to take photos, and you're going to really benefit from the journalistic experience.
Yeah, and is this open for just University of Kentucky students, or can other college students, like, anywhere do this, or who all attended Picture Kentucky?
We had a wait list of people after UK students filled it up. So there's UK students, and then there's also one Kent State student. His name's Aiden. He's been there a few years as well.
Okay.
But it's pretty much just UK students. I'm not sure if it would grow to be open to other schools. Right now it's just UK because it's sponsored by the Kernel, and then Canon and Sony are also there, which I will mention. We got to use Canon and Sony cameras absolutely free of charge, which it really truly helps break the barrier of people trying to get into photojournalism, because most people are like, oh, I love taking pictures, but I don't have a good enough camera. But Canon and Sony really took away that barrier, which was great.
Yeah, that's really nice. So kind of just in a reflection, right? You've come back trying to get some sleep, catching up on lots of rest. What did you walk away with learning this year from Picture Kentucky?
I learned a ton just about my peers and how excited they are. But I also learned a few specific photography things just about shooting. Like, my coach was Pete Souza, and so I was very intimidated going into it, that he was going to be looking at not just my best images, but also my worst images and the test shots that I take on my card. Because the way it works is you take your SD card back, and give it to your coach, and that's that. I don't even see the photos except on the back of my camera. So I'm, like, very, very intentional when I'm shooting. And something that he chose to do as a coach was to not crop any of the images until, like, final show. And so that really made me, when I was shooting, look at all four corners in the viewfinder and really take time to compose my photos instead of just taking a million and hoping there's a good one.
Yeah.
I found myself being far, far more intentional about what I was taking pictures of. And then I just got to learn a little bit from him about how he used to have to be really intentional shooting on film. He had to, you have to wait for the moment. You have 36 frames, and once you run out of that, you've got to get a whole nother roll. So I just have a new appreciation for waiting for the moment.
That shot, yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought that was a really cool aspect too, that they took your SD card, and there was a couple shots that I had no idea that I even had that ended up on my final photo project. And there was a couple shots that I thought were awesome that weren't considered. So it was just a nice learning experience to have a coach look at your photos and be like, yeah, this one is actually really good and this one is not as good as you thought it was. But for me, I feel like it was just getting more in touch with nature. I was outside pretty much like the whole time, just trying to find good river shots, on a boat a lot. And I've always had water like in my life personally because my mom works in water. So this was just kind of another opportunity for me to work with it. And I think that it was just like calling me to do that story on it and to seek out like why people lived in Frankfurt and what they thought about the river and what it meant to them. So I think I just got more in touch with nature, learned how to take better photos, so that I feel much more comfortable with a camera now. And yeah, I think that's about it.
As journalists, obviously you are graduating at the end of the year, starting your career in the professional world. How does Picture Kentucky kind of influence your professional career, or how does it inspire you, or anything like that?
Do you want to go?
Do I? Okay. I'll go first. I mean, it just makes you more excited to get out and start doing stories and dedicate your life to this. I think that I will end up doing a couple years of journalism. I don't know if that will be my career for my entire life, but that's okay. I mean, there was a coach who that was his path. He was a photographer for the Indiana paper, was it?
Yeah.
That Matt Dietrich?
Indy Star.
Yeah, and now he's a photographer for a hospital.
Oh, wow.
And he does video for them. So I think that it showed me that, like, it is worth it for however long that I do it.
Abby?
Yeah, I agree. Just bouncing off that, it really, I mean, it's almost just like a 4-day long pep talk of why journalism is awesome. And just being able to be in such close proximity of such talented people, including my peers. I got to learn so much from them. It's just a great learning experience overall. And I can take that and apply it to my future because this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a staff photojournalist for a paper and continue to be a watchdog and hold the government accountable and give a voice to the voiceless and all the things. And this workshop just always helps me remind myself of why I'm in this, and it's because I want to tell people's stories.
That's very inspiring. Last question for you, Abby. So obviously you're our managing editor for the Kernel. So how does Picture Kentucky inspire you as a leader, and what do you take away from this and want to spread, in our newsroom?
Yeah, I think I learned a ton from the coaches in the leadership aspect in that they are so patient. That's something that I always want to be. With my staff and the newsroom in general, I just strive to be patient. I feel like a lot of miscommunication happens when people aren't patient to wait for an explanation, and I'm guilty of that. But I really learned from them to be patient. They were just so kind and waiting for us to get it with photos. I mean, there are people who are brand new that are learning, and these coaches just really take it day by day, and they don't get upset, and they teach you why this is a great photo and why this isn't a great photo, and then like why the super cool images don't make it into the final show because it doesn't add to the story, which is something I really struggled with the first 2 years. I was like, what about this awesome shot that I got? And they're like, well, why does this portrait add to the story? And it made me think, and it doesn't.
Right.
So it also helps me with the photo editing aspect. It helps me know what to look for and how to make a solid gallery of photos. Even if it's just a football game, it helps me know like what to start with and middle and an end.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for enlightening us on what Picture Kentucky is. I know you both have inspired me to go next year.
Yay!
Yes, I definitely would like to attend Picture Kentucky. So
Awesome.
Thank you both for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Abby.
Of course.
All right. All right, so now we're here at Scoops Out of the Litter, where we tell you what you need to know about national, state, and local news as a college student.
Yes.
All right, so let's get into it. Gianna, let's hear about homecoming that happened this last week at UK.
Homecoming was really fun. I know they had a lot of events. I really just covered one specific event on Friday, but I know UK hosted a slew of events. So I covered Friday, 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. This homecoming step show hosted by the National Panhellenic Council of Fraternity and Sorority Life, and it was the most entertaining hour of my life. It was so fun. These fraternity and sororities were in Gatton student ballrooms.
Are these the historically black and
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so fraternities and sororities?
Yes, and huge crowd. And yeah, these fraternity and sororities would come up and perform, do step dancing, which I had no idea what that was until I was watching, and it's like just so impressive. It's really fun to watch, and the crowd is super like involved and is shouting, like nicely shouting things at them and hyping them up. So it was a really good experience. I did leave early, so I'm not sure what fraternity or sorority won. But there was like a huge panel of judges. Like it was a legit thing. And it was just really fun because you saw a lot of guys and women walk in with like leather jackets or Letterman jackets with like their Greek signs, and they would cheer, and like they have like certain calls. So I'm not sure what sorority, but they were like squealing. It was really, really fun to watch, and I feel like it was just a huge it just really promoted like the culture and the unity that these fraternities and sororities have at UK. So it was a really neat experience.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know if they got any rewards for winning?
Bragging rights for the rest of the year. And they did win like little trophies, and I think they got a gift card.
Okay.
They got a pretty, I believe they got a pretty hefty gift card for future events. So it was really neat, and like all of them had like different costumes. Like the first group of guys were inspired by Karate Kid, so they all had the like I don't know.
So was the song that they danced to like "Eye of the Tiger"?
No, it was I don't know how they create their shows, but it was really neat because they came out and they started off like with like voiceovers, and they would just like mimic on stage, talking, and then they went into like a step dance, and where they were just singing, no music, just them singing, and then it went into another dance of like them eyeing a girl down. And then they finished again with stepping, but it all kind of just told the story of like power and I would say kind of karate, but it wasn't like Karate Kid, of course, but it was interesting like what music they selected to kind of emulate this story that they were telling. And then the other guys, which I really liked, I have to find out who won. It was these only two men on stage, and they came out with the Cops theme song, Bad Boys. And I was like, this is fire. This is already fire, and they haven't even started. So it was really good. And I know one of the sorority groups, they did like a whole like cheer tower where they had like two girls up and then one girl up. It was a very kind of scary thing to watch, but they did very, very good. It was a great homecoming experience.
Yeah, very cool. It seems like it was a very fun event to attend.
It was. I'm glad that UK hosts something like this. It was super entertaining. So I recommend it next year. Everybody should go to the step show. So it was really, really fun.
All right. Well, let's get into our second story, a story that Giana also covered.
Yes.
Let's talk about Keeneland College Day.
Yes. So also on Friday, 11 to 5, Keeneland hosted College Scholarship Day, where they gave out a lot of things, goodie bags, free tickets. Goodfellas had something, a whole bunch of goodie bags, but the big thing was 10 students, full-time students. Any, Kentucky university or college could attend this event. there was going to be 10 scholarships worth $2,000 given out, and then 2 $10,000 scholarships given out. One of the winners for the $10,000 scholarships was a UK senior, and she was really over the moon about winning this. I mean, who wouldn't be, of course?
Yeah.
But so she's going to use that scholarship to apply for law school next year. So good for her. I'm really happy for her. But it was a really fun event. It was a beautiful day. Good horse racing, or whatever the terminology for that is.
Yeah.
And they had really good mocktails. I don't know
Okay.
what it was, but the mocktails were very good. They had a Drake's food truck there, so it was definitely a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. Did you bet on any horses?
I did not, but I did go the following day with my friends and my boyfriend, and me and my boyfriend, we won.
Oh, sweet.
We won. Because of course, we went up there. I have never placed a bet in my life, so I just kind of played dumb with the woman. I was like, you got to help me. I don't know what to do. And, of course, number 3 was out of the race. And then I was like, how about number 8? Out of the race. And I was like, of course, the 2 horses that I pick are out of the race. Great. So then I just stumbled on number 4. And number 4 won. And I was so happy.
Awesome.
So we won $40.
Oh, sweet.
So we treated ourselves to a little lunch the following day.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like my dad cursed me. He taught me how to horse bet
Really?
very young. And we would go together, or whenever we would go out with my family, and he just has like these elaborate 3-horse, 4-horse boxes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't do a very good job.
Have you been to Churchill Downs before?
Yes, I have been to Churchill
Really?
Downs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Louisville native. How could I not have gone to Churchill Downs?
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Keeneland or Churchill Downs?
I'd have to say Keeneland. I don't like Churchill
Really?
Downs. Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That is so surprising.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, Keeneland, if I'm sure some of our listeners know, it just has like a very historic vibe to it. They haven't given in to the way that gambling has kind of overtaken a lot of America in the last, I don't know how many years, last years.
Yeah.
But Churchill Downs is kind of just like, it's very historic. It's very, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, the site of the Kentucky Derby is a very important place. I'm very glad it's in Louisville. But it's just not as, classic as Keeneland is. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's not as classic.
Yeah. I know when I first went to Keeneland, because obviously I'm not from these parts, so I'm not in the realm of horse racing or anything like that. I do, of course, know Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Derby because, I mean, I feel like everybody in the United States knows that. But I really liked Keeneland a lot. It was much more smaller, so it felt more intimate, like you felt closer to the race and watching it. And I really like how they have the general admission, so people who haven't been to Keeneland, the first floor is like open, so you can just go as close as you want, and it's not nice when it's super crowded because you're just so close to people, but on not busy days it's really nice that you have that option. Then the second floor is, seating. I feel like there's a lot of variety, but it's also just so peaceful and quiet and beautiful there.
Yeah, it is, and that's why I think it's a lot more classic too. It just, you can get very close to the race. You don't have to have like seat tickets to get a good view.
Yeah.
It feels like you're at a park almost.
Yeah, I agree.
Like in a sense.
I agree.
But it's just very nice. All right. Do you have anything else that you want to add about
I'm
college
good.
today?
I'm all good.
Awesome. Let's get to our final story then. So I don't have my computer in front of me. I'm sorry, but our last story is about the Speaker of the House. And so the Speaker of the House recently, what's his name, got removed. Kevin McCarthy of California got removed. And then Representative Steve Scalise, I think that's how you say his name. He was up for bid of the Speaker of the House, and then somebody said, you're not going to have enough votes, so he had to back down. And now Jones is up for Speaker of the House. I have no idea,
I
but I
don't.
just wanted to say this story because just to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, after Kevin McCarthy
Yeah.
was removed, I mean, there's been a couple names thrown in there because I think there was obviously the first guy that after Kevin McCarthy, but yeah, it's just insane to me, this process of like you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
elected. And I mean, the reason Kevin McCarthy got removed is because there was a potential threat of a government shutdown, and
Yeah.
he didn't really act fast enough. So it's just crazy to me how somebody can be removed that fast and someone can be, kind of persuaded not to be in this position.
Yeah, it's very wild. I think it shows the failure of the two-party system. It shows the failure of how they elect a lot of the positions in government that aren't democratic, that are from, like, they're voting it as a republic. And I think it shows kind of the way that if a third party was to join the government that was not willing to compromise as well, like the Republican and Democratic parties aren't willing to do right now, they're not willing to compromise.
Yeah.
If you had a third party like that, then it would literally shut the government down. Nothing would get done. So I just wanted to talk about that story just to highlight all that. And
Keep your eye out for a possible another name to be in this running of who the House Speaker of the House will be.
Yeah, and a little more on this story. The reason that they can't get a new Speaker of the House is because there's kind of this more right-wing faction within the Republican Party that's not willing to back down until the candidate that's voted in as Speaker of the House is like approved by Trump, I think. Even though Trump hasn't won the presidency yet, they still want to make sure that they have his approval. So it's just all a mess. It's all out of order. And like I was saying, it just shows you that if there was a third party in there, which there kind of is right now with a super right-wing little group of Republicans, like nothing would get done. So
Yeah.
But I think that's about it for our podcast today.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening so much. We had a great time. And we will see you all next week.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, everybody.
Yep. All right. Outro song.